This episode of Around the Layout is powered by Rapido Trains.
Buying Rapido Trains will make you happy.
Rapido's going back to the 90s for the return of the Mac. SD70 Macs in both HO and N scale in variations you've never seen before. Whether it's coal or racks, you need a 70 Mac. Check out all of the details at rapidotrains.com. Around the Layout podcast is heading to Chattanooga for the 2026 National Train Show, appearing in conjunction with Spring Creek Model Trains. Come check out everything Spring Creek has to offer, from the latest releases to the wide selection of models, supplies, and outstanding service that make them a favorite across the hobby. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, Chattanooga, Tennessee, or at train shows coast to coast, stop in and say wow. Tully Models is heading to the St. Louis RPM July 23rd through 25th. Stop by their table for new feed mill kit and freight car load announcements, plus a large assortment of details to take your layout industries to the next level. Can't make it to St. Louis? Tully Models will also be at the National Train Show in Chattanooga, August 1st and 2nd. See more at tullymodels.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott, so glad you could join us. On this episode, we're talking control systems, and joining me to have that conversation, we have Michael Peterson.
Hello.
And Nathan Holmes.
Hi, everyone.
For those that aren't familiar with those two names, these are the two guys behind Iowa Scaled Engineering. And we're having them on as our resident experts for control systems. And we're going to talk about the availability of control systems and ultimately what you should be thinking about before you purchase them. So I appreciate you both coming on to have that conversation. Before all this, we were talking about the St. Louis RPM and getting excited about that, where we're going to be seeing a whole bunch of folks, and you guys will be able to talk to customers and be sharing all the awesome stuff that's going on at Iowa Scaled Engineering.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We've got a few new things that we'll be demoing there for the first time in public. And of course, we'll have, all of our traditional products, the road ready crossing, the proto throttle that everyone actually knows us for, and our simple sig line. So it's a fantastic RPM, absolutely great show. You'll see modeling that's just amazing. And stop by and see us while you're there if you attend the show.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that they get over and see you and check out what's going on at Iowa Scaled Engineering. And I know one of the key parts, we talked about the proto throttle, is an interaction between that product and control systems. And there is seemingly a plethora of different types of control systems out there. Let's talk a little bit about the basic idea of a control system. What is this that we're actually talking about?
Well, it really depends upon how big you want to go with the term control system. At its simplest, a control system is something that allows you to operate your layout in the way that you want to operate it. So control system could be as simple as a DC throttle on a simple switching layout that's got one locomotive, or it could be as complicated as a JMRI computer in the background running over LCC or LocoNet or CMRI, driving, signaling and turnouts and sound effects and lighting, and tied into the DCC system that's actually running the trains. Basically, it's a whole spectrum from extremely simple to very complex, depending upon the modeler's needs and what they're trying to integrate and bring together to develop that scene on their layout.
For Michael, for control systems, what are the capabilities of them? Are we talking about, as Nathan has started to list out, just trains? What else can a control system provide us?
Well, obviously it lets you control the trains, but there's a lot of features on the layout that you can control with that control system. Anywhere from signals to throwing switches, pretty much anything that the sky's the limit, really, as much as your imagination will let you go there. It interfaces between the human, the person holding the throttle and the layout, and then even between a computer doing things automatically or responding to things automatically for you behind the scenes.
Let's talk about the different levels. You mentioned that, Nathan, that there's a spectrum of different types. Let's talk about the very basics and then up to some of the advanced stuff that's going on in a general sense. For somebody looking for simplicity in general, what does a simplified control system, what will that provide them?
So, at the very simple end, at least for Z and HO and 2-rail O scale, you're looking at just a basic DC throttle that allows you to move the locomotive forward, backward. Might provide some accessory power for some lighting. Really, the only control it gives you is over one locomotive or consist of locomotives. Most people in the hobby today are going to adopt DCC because it's the de facto control standard thanks to Lens and the NMRA. It allows you to have more realistic control of that locomotive. It allows you to not only set it, which direction you're going and how fast you're going, but also gives you control over functions. Things like being able to turn the headlights on and off, being able to turn ditch lights on and off. And most people these days are also going to adopt sound, which puts more control in the locomotive such that it brings realism to the layout. It brings things to life. It allows you to blow the horn for crossings, to have the bell when you're switching in a crowded environment. It's the thing that communicates the operator's intention, like Michael said, down to the locomotive, and it does that via some sort of handheld and then sending signals over the rails to the locomotive. Those are kind of your basic intro levels in the hobby today.
So when do you hit a point where that simplification no longer works?
I think there's a couple levels. If you want to do any sort of signaling, that's when you need to start thinking about integration between the two things. Or if you want to start controlling more accessories around the layout than just the trains, such that maybe you want to turn lights on and off on the layout with a function decoder. Maybe you want to set up signals such that they're driven through the DCC system. Maybe you want to set up your turnouts in the yard such that when you push a button on a control panel, the yard throat will automatically line to a given track. That's when you start looking at the more complex details of layout control systems.
Let's talk about the benefit of layout control systems in general. We see some folks that have integrated them into more complex systems or have gone back to the very simple throw a toggle switch and be able to control it with 12-volt power. What advantage does adding your turnout control and those type accessories into a control system provide you?
Well, I think one of the big benefits is typically less wiring. If you have all of your, take Nathan's example of the switches, and if you have one centralized location, all those wires have to come back to that centralized location. But if you have a bunch of scattered decoders all connected through some layout control bus, be it LocoNet or LCC or whatever that bus is, you're basically just running a set, maybe 2 wires, maybe 4 wires to everything, and one right after another, and then that can control the accessory you're trying to control, the switch. It can read the toggle switch. So there's a benefit to wiring. I hesitate to say complexity. In some ways, it takes physical complexity and turns it into software complexity, which for some people that's a good thing. For some people that may not be.
Let's talk about what the flexibility of that provides by moving it over to software base. And does that provide additional options or features that perhaps just a simple on-off toggle switch cannot provide?
Yeah, I mean, you can one thing is upgradability, or you can change it more easily in the future. If you decide, that isn't quite how I wanted it to work, you just change a few lines of code and you're not in there with a soldering iron, cutting wires, rewiring things, tearing apart your control panel. And it provides some upgradability in the future. Say you just start with a very simple signal system, say it's just red and green, based on occupancy, and then later you could come back in with software and integrate the actual signal logic. So there's paths to upgrade there by doing it in software versus hardware.
But to me, it sounds like you can start to stack those things on top of each other a little bit. You start at a basic level of having, let's say, turnout control, then you can tie it into the signaling and make this all really a bigger integration.
Yeah, you could start with just seeing where your trains are with the block detectors, having some basic turnout control, and then eventually when you want to go add your signals to the layout, the possibility is there, and it's not a lot of physical rework and rewiring on the layout. Most of that can be embedded in the software. Obviously, you have to wire the signals. There's a certain level of hardware you can't get around, but it does provide some flexibility, though.
Traditionally, we have seen where these systems are available from a commercial retail manufacturer, but it seems like a trend is starting to happen in the hobby. And I know even you folks have been a part of this, is really the open source and the ability to build your own out of that. Talk a little bit about how that technology sweep is actually changing a bit of this market and the options that are available to model railroaders.
Yeah, the open source movement, I'll call it, has been huge for the hobby. There's, as you mentioned, in the old days, it was you bought a throttle from this company and you bought the DCC system from this company. And, one of the things that even ISE rides on, because, all of our products are open source, is this expansion in the availability of users being able to do their own microcontroller coding and debugging. Arduino has been a huge part of that. There's entire groups out there devoted to using Arduinos on model railroads, and it makes it far more accessible for the average user to go, I want this custom thing that nobody makes, so I'll take this piece of software from over here. I'll give you a concrete example here. A good friend of ours built a loader for his, I think it was for a rock loader, but it has a small screen, it has buttons, and basically you spot the car, you hit the button, it starts loading it. It has a bar graph that forces the operator to slow down, wait for it, triggers a sound effect. It won't start loading, I think, unless there's actually a car spotted there, because it's got a sensor mounted to it. But it's all done with just an Arduino and libraries he's found and tutorials he's found around the web. It's really allowed users to create those truly custom features on their layout that bring a little more realism to some specific element that they want to enhance. And that gets a little further into the control systems as well, because the core of LCC, the specification is open. There's a couple of open source friendly licensed libraries to allow users to develop LCC hardware. NCE has been very good about providing an open cab bus specification, as is Lens. Digitrax, there's a personal edition of LocoNet, and there's an open source LocoNet library. It comes with a few caveats, but there are plenty of people doing Arduino development on LocoNet peripherals as well. Really, it's spread the creativity out from just the manufacturers who have also got to focus on making a product that can be built and profitably made and supported, to all of these little niche cases that just they're never going to get filled commercially. But when you've got someone who's motivated, and the vast knowledge of the internet now with AI being able to help code things for users that are not software developers, it really opens up the field.
Michael, Nathan just mentioned AI as one of those resources, and it's seemingly, I know there's a mixed feeling about AI in the model railroading community, right? I definitely think there's something to be said about the artistic side and what AI is trying to replace, and we don't want it to become a full-on artist for us and replace the things that we can enjoy in model railroading. But on the technology side, it seems to be a really applicable tool. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, honestly, I was skeptical when I first, when it first became a thing, and it wasn't until recently that I started using it. But it is a powerful tool if you use it as a tool. if you use it to completely replace any thinking, it's probably not going to result in a very good end product. But if you're doing some thinking and use the AI tool to do a lot of the grunt work for you, and specifically in the case of code, to write a lot of the code that would just take a human, an hour to write, yeah, it can be a huge benefit. It can be a time saver, and even when you get stuck on why is this not working, sometimes it can be that third unbiased opinion at looking at it and going, because you missed a semicolon here, that thing you'll never see just because you wrote it and you just won't see that it's missing. But so it can definitely be a handy tool in that sense. For people who may not be as comfortable with coding, yeah, it can definitely get you that start of something so that then you can take and modify and customize exactly what you want. But yeah, I think it's especially on the coding side, it's a huge asset, and it's a great tool, I think, for a lot of people to make the thing that they want to make.
So Nathan, we've been talking about all these different types of things, the systems that will be able to work together. How do all of these things tie together? It just seems like it would be so difficult to get one to talk to the other or converse with other systems. How does this all network? How does this all connect in a way where it works?
I'll be honest that there's still a lot of friction on those interfaces between systems. But the biggest and the greatest thing that's come to that problem in this hobby is JMRI. And again, going back to the open source thing, Bob Jacobson made it open source from the start. There are a ton of contributors, and as such, it supports a huge number of control systems. Pretty much anything you can think of, if they've gotten their hands on a specification, it supports it. So you can have a JMRI computer that's talking to your DCC system. It's talking out to signals over LCC. It's talking, on my own layout, I've even experimented with letting it control the layout lighting as well to transition between day and night in relation to the fast clocks, because it can talk what they call DMX 512, which goes to dimmer packs and other things used in theatrical lighting effects. So JMRI is kind of that great equalizer in the middle, where it serves as the Omni widget that connects all of these things and can translate between them.
So you're saying something this powerful, being JMRI, is free?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% free. Anybody can download it. The source code's there, even if you're software inclined. It is an amazing tool. It's great for not only running layouts and providing things like virtual dispatch panels, or even physical dispatch panels, but it's great for doing locomotive programming, which almost any way you want to control your locomotive, you're going to want to customize some of the effects, like change the volume, change the speed curves, such that they're all nicely matched and your consists run well together, or even change the horn because the default horn didn't match the prototype. JMRI makes all of those CV changes that you used to have to do on a throttle by hand. It's click on a screen and pull down options, and it's fantastic.
How has JMRI become so powerful? Is it because of that open source and a multitude of contributors?
Very much so. It's a bunch of very devoted individuals who have put tens of thousands of hours into it, and it's a huge community. But there's a core group of developers, and then there's a whole bunch of people who just contribute a little bit here and there to meet their specific need. And you get a big enough team working on any problem, and suddenly it becomes easy.
So, Michael, when would someone know that it's time to involve themselves with JMRI on their layout? Is it a layout size? Is it what you want to do with it? Is a combination of the two? When does a person go from that simple handheld DCC controller to say JMRI really will be the next step for you in your layout build?
I think it has pretty much everything to do with what you want to do. You could have a giant layout and still have no need to run JMRI, but it's really the capabilities that you're trying to achieve with it and how you want to achieve it. There's so many pieces of JMRI, it's hard to go through every one of them, but if you're using it in terms for layout control, a signal system would probably be the example that comes to mind for most people, having JMRI control that. But there are other ways to do that too. So a lot of it depends on what you're trying to achieve and what features JMRI, what problem can JMRI solve for you? I think that's the question you have to ask. And then if it can solve that problem, then it's the step you should look at.
Let's dive into these different types of DCC control systems in a little bit more specifics, and really in no particular order, because I don't think any of our mission here today is to condemn any one system over the other, but we do want to look at some positives about them and maybe some potentials of improvement, or where it may fit in with a layout owner and the type of layout they're doing, and when it's time to look to move to the next level or to a different system. I'm going to start right at the beginning, because I think from everything I've heard that the NCE Power Cab seems to be one of the cornerstones of starting a small layout, and it's simple out of the box. Let's talk a little bit about the NCE Power Cab and its capabilities. Why don't you tell us about that, Michael?
Yeah, Nathan and I are both NCE users. I've got the Power Cab. We use it at all of our shows. It is very simple. Power, track, you're ready to go. It's all self-contained. It's a fairly intuitive interface. I mean, there are a lot of buttons on the throttle, but it is a fairly intuitive interface. Turn the knob one way to make it go, turn it the other way to slow the train down. The horn is listed as a button. The function buttons are numbers on there. It's pretty easy to use. I think most people, it's pretty intuitive, and I think that's been the secret to its success.
Nathan, why don't we talk about the capabilities of the Power Cab beyond the controlling the train? Where is its sweet spot?
For me, its sweet spot is small layouts that have really not a ton of integration or things that you're trying to run from the cab. I mean, certainly I would say if you're doing single locomotive operation on a switching layout, or maybe two trains because you can add a couple of extra cabs to it, and you're doing very simple things like you've got some DCC controlled turnouts, and you want to throw a few of those. It's incredible, to me at least. I always found the NCE interface incredibly intuitive. Picking up my first Power Cab years ago, I could figure out within a couple of minutes, just looking at the keyboard and the labels and what popped up on the screen. Push this button. Oh, that's the turnout. Okay, click this button. All right, there we go. Turnout through. Got this. That's the level I think the Power Cab hits as a sweet spot, is the people who want to run a few, one or a couple trains at once and have some simple accessory decoders here and there. And they just want to plug something in and it works.
Is there anything else that compares to the NCE Power Cab at that level?
TCS actually just launched, I think it's called an LT50, which is very much the same concept. I will have to say I've personally not used one yet. I've used their smaller throttle that it's based on, the UWT50, but I've not actually tried the LT50 as a standalone command station yet. And Digitrax has their Zephyr system, which is sort of their intro system.
So 3 options at least there listed out between NCE, TCS, and Digitrax on the entry level. When would you know you're at the limit or need to move beyond a system, say like the Power Cab or the Zephyr? When do you start seeing the need for a bigger control system, and what are you going to gain from that?
One of the steps there would be if you've run out of power. if you don't have enough power from that simple command station, the Power Cab, for instance, to run all the trains that you want to, either if you're exceeding the power limits of that Power Cab, or if you need more throttles than you can support on the Power Cab, that would be one obvious indicator that you should move up to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, my layout is designed for 3 power districts. It's designed for, basically 4 operators. But given that each one of those trains is probably going to be 3 sound-equipped locomotives, and I need 4 other cabs attached, plus whoever's doing staging yard work and that kind of thing, I kind of knew that the power cab wasn't going to be enough for the layout on its own. Whereas Michael, I mean, your layout is a perfect example of something the power cab fits well.
Yeah, one, maybe two locomotives at the most, one, maybe two operators, and about a mile long, scale mile long. So it's perfect for the power cab.
So switching layouts, the smaller, maybe portable, maybe modular style layout where you want to control just that section somewhere in that beginner system, like the NCE Power Cab or the Zephyr or the TCS LT50.
You talked about modular there briefly, and I mean, that's another thing that might drive you to a particular system choice. The Fremo guys have adopted Digitrax as their standard. So, I mean, if you're getting into the Fremo or Fremo N communities, that's probably going to push you toward a Digitrax style solution because you're going to want a Digitrax cab to run at shows. But, so you're going to have ports on your modular already ready for that. So you could just buy a Zephyr, plug it in, and you're good to go. So there are some external factors there, particularly in the modular community or the club community, that may push you one way or the other.
And the same could be said for home layouts too, right? If all the people you associate with use NCE, then you going off and buying a different system, you're kind of going to be on your own. But if you have the same system as all of your fellow operators, modeling buddies in the area, then you at least have a community to fall back on if you have questions or whatnot. So that should definitely be a consideration when choosing the system.
Let's talk a little bit more advanced when you've run out of power, when you want to have some more features and functionality. Let's talk about some of the bigger systems out there, understanding what they bring to the table. We'll start with NCE. We mentioned the power cab. When you want to upgrade beyond the power cab, talk about the steps there and what's available from NCE.
So NCE basically has two levels of system. The power cab, which is good for smaller layouts and single operators or maybe dual operators. And from there, it goes up to the Power Pro system, which can handle amazingly large layouts. For example, the Colorado Railroad Museum up in Greeley, which is one of the largest layouts in the world, runs off of an NCE Power Pro system. It scales extremely well to dozens of trains and operators running at once. Any of the larger systems, be they Digitrax, NCE, TCS, you have to add boosters to in order to provide more output power. Eventually, you're going to run into the point that you're running so many trains that they're consuming all the power that the original booster can provide. So that's when you start breaking layouts up into power districts and go, well, this one has 2 to 3 trains running at any given time. We'll give it a booster. This one has 2 to 3 trains running at any given time. We'll give it a booster, and that's another 5 amps of power. And so that applies to any of the bigger systems, and you can actually mix and match boosters between vendors to some degree. But the biggest thing in stepping up from the smaller command station to the bigger command station is just the sheer amount of things they can handle simultaneously. You can run significantly more trains, they can handle significantly more accessories, and they can generally handle, for example, the NC Power Pro has a built-in computer interface right in the command station then, whereas the Power Cab doesn't. So it makes that JMRI connection a lot easier.
So that's NCE. Let's talk about what's available from Digitrax.
Digitrax also has, as you step up, you get more capabilities. I have a DCS 240 sitting actually just off to my right that I use for our Digitrax testing, but it's every bit as capable as the big NCE systems and offers some features that they don't, like full LocoNet support. TCS actually has a larger system as well, known as the CS105. It was the first LCC command station on the market, and that brings in a whole other host of possibilities because now it's speaking a standard layout control bus, so you can use other vendors' LCC compatible accessories in concert with it.
So you mentioned NCE. We've talked about Digitrax, these two major manufacturers. Let's talk about, as we were discussing before, this open source and DCC-EX and all of this other stuff, how does that factor in as well as a potential third option? Where does that fit?
DCC-EX is really cool for those people who are technically inclined. So for those who don't know what it is, it's an open source project to build a command station for a DCC system. On one side, it provides a Y throttle interface, so a Wi-Fi throttle interface, the same as JMRI provides. You can use it with the TCS wireless throttles. You can use it with, Y throttle or engine driver on your phone. And out the other side, it provides DCC signal. Now, to set it up, you do have to be slightly technically inclined, or at least able to follow some directions and program an Arduino. But the code's already written. It's a community maintaining it again, like I said, and they're a fantastic little device for those who want a small command station.
For some, that may scare them to hear that the community is supporting this product. But then again, we've had JMRI, and that's been a community-supported thing. Michael, talk about the feeling of getting over that, and for somebody to adapt the DCC-EX or the open source and having some comfortability versus knowing you can pick up the phone and call a manufacturer.
Yeah, I think if you want to be able to pick up the phone and call someone, then the open source route is probably not for you. You have to be comfortable maybe going out onto an email list or a forum and saying, hey, I've got this problem. This is what it's doing. Can you help me? And you have to be comfortable doing that and comfortable taking the advice you get and trying a few things. And it's probably not going to be solved the first shot. You have to be willing to do some of that. But on the other hand, if there's a special case circumstance that you have that you need some special version of code, you can also go to that same community and say, hey, I need it to do this. Can you help me with this? And you probably have a better chance of getting it that way than through a traditional manufacturer who has to produce these by the hundreds or the thousands and support them, manufacture them, all that. It's much harder to get changes like that into a product. I speak from experience as a manufacturer. Once the product is a product, oftentimes it doesn't change very much, and there's good reason for that. But these community supported projects, they're much more adaptable. You can mold them to what you need, or people can help you mold them to what you need. So there's a benefit, but again, you have to be willing to enter that community and work within that community, as opposed to just going to a manufacturer and saying, hey, this doesn't work.
If something like this doesn't scare you, then DCC-EX might be the right thing for you. I keep it on my bench as a piece of test kit because it's simple. It's assembled from generic parts off eBay. It's inexpensive, which makes it incredibly accessible to modelers that may not have the financial means to buy, a full-featured DCC system. That's one of the great things about this open source movement, is that it opens things up to people who may not be able to afford the commercial products to build some of their own stuff by contributing a little time and effort into it.
And Nathan, tell us, for the audience listening at home, what you got in your hand there.
This is a DCC-EX system that I built using the instructions on their website. It's just an Arduino underneath. There you go. And this is running the DCC-EX code. And then this is a standard Arduino motor driver shield that I picked up off eBay. And that's actually what provides the power stage for driving the rails.
And we'll share images of what Nathan's talking about on our website, aroundthelayout.com/245. And I think that's one of the really cool things that's happening. Again, you talked about just picking these up on eBay. The process is simplified. You're able to get this stuff in your hand relatively easy. There's a ton of information. If you're willing to do the work for that, it seems like there's quite a bit of benefit for it.
That's exactly it. If you're willing to put in a little bit of work and learn a few things and be willing to try and experiment a little bit, then yeah, you get a tremendous return on that time investment.
One of the things that was mentioned here was Wi-Fi in these new Wi-Fi throttles. We have TCS producing them, plus there's a multitude of other options. Michael, talk about what Wi-Fi is doing for the model railroading control systems and its accessibility?
Well, yeah, it makes it accessible to pretty much anyone with a smartphone. If, say, for instance, you have a large layout, you need 20 throttles, you probably have 20 throttles, but people can come in, and if in a pinch, they can use their cell phone on it. Or at a show, if you want to let someone try to operate the layout, you can connect the phone to it and operate that way. It's taken a bunch of proprietary radio protocols and I won't really say consolidated it, but it made it accessible through a standard that pretty much everyone has. Again, with the cell phone throttle, or with your cell phone and an app, or a tablet and an app, you have a throttle right there. You don't need a special piece of hardware.
Would you say Wi-Fi is really kind of bridging the gap between different systems and kind of bringing it towards a neutral center?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. That's a much better way of putting it than I did.
But I just find it amazing. We've got these companies and the ability, like I have a UWT 100, and with that Wi-Fi throttle, I can go over to a Digitrax system, run it, don't have to really do anything other than connect to their Wi-Fi, and come back and run on the NCE. And now with all the other capabilities and their ability to, control within the throttle, that's seemingly like an answer not only for, the individual, but especially for clubs and its popularity there.
Yeah, I think with you're right on the club aspect. That's a good one. That's where you could find some benefit.
Going to say one of the things that, and I promise TCS isn't paying me in any way, but one of the things I'm actually very excited about is TCS is working on a Wi-Fi capable decoder. Probably won't do any good for end scalers like myself yet, but it's that whole direct, it takes LCC to the next level. LCC has a specification for operating over Wi-Fi. And if you're using a TCS throttle with a TCS command station, that's what it's talking over the Wi-Fi layer is LCC. But by putting Wi-Fi on the decoder now, they've brought that standardization, and the commands go straight to the locomotive over Wi-Fi rather than having to go through rails that may have intermittent contact or a little bit of dirty track. And it should allow a much more reliable feedback path so the locomotive can tell you what it's doing as well. It's one of the things I'm excited about. Soundtrax has their Blue Nami as well, and I don't want to leave that out here. Soundtrax is wonderful. They make fantastic products. But the Blue Nami is a Soundtrax specific thing, whereas and it operates over Bluetooth, not Wi-Fi. So it's a different underlying protocol. But bringing LCC and Wi-Fi straight to the decoder is an open standard. So we should see it hopefully across vendors, and it should improve control not only in terms of reliability and fighting the internal dirty track problem we all have, but also bringing new capabilities where the locomotives can talk back to the throttles.
Well, and your mention of Blue Nami brings up another point too, and I think it would apply to the Wi-Fi throttles too, given that it's an app now on your phone instead of just a bunch of physical buttons on the throttle. You can now label those buttons with, this is the horn, this is the headlight, whatnot. It provides a lot more flexibility on that user interface and makes it more approachable, I think, to beginners and people who don't want to think in terms of, well, what's F5 mean? I just want to turn that light on. And so that app lets you customize things a lot more.
Thanks for filling that in. That was the part my brain was missing was, that feedback path from the locomotive to the throttle. The locomotive can send, this is how I'm configured, and it can describe itself back to the throttle such that the throttle then goes, oh, then I know to attach this to the horn button and this to the bell button and this to the headlight for the front and so on.
So with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth now making advances, is this the future for layout control, or is there something else that you guys foresee on the horizon as being the next big step?
I think there's definitely a future for it, and there are certainly pieces of the hobby that really benefit from like Blue Nami, for instance. Garden scale railroads, places where you can't rely on track power or signals getting through the track. That's definitely an area of the hobby that will benefit from those types of things. Personally, I think power through the track with DCC is going to be here for quite some time. It'll coexist with these wireless protocols for a while, and then we'll just see where things end up in the future. If someone can perfect reliable and long enough battery power to run an HO scale locomotive for a full op session, that you can completely get rid of track power, then that will probably push things more towards a wireless way of operating. But until that time, I think, for simplicity, what we have today with DCC is going to be around for a while, and it'll find ways to coexist with these wireless protocols. Sort of like back to what Nathan was saying with Soundtracks and their Blue Nami. One of their big selling points is the ease of configuring the locomotive. You can still operate it either way, but really using that app to configure the locomotive, I think, changes things quite a bit. Just, you're not thinking in terms of CVs, you're thinking in terms of acceleration, lighting, what the thing actually is, and you're not having to deal with all the technical details of it.
Is there an advancement to control systems as they are that you would like to see happen in the hobby?
I would say one of the big pieces that we're still sort of missing is a reliable way to get information back from the train to the operator. I mentioned the TCS and the LCC capable wireless decoders earlier, and that's a step in that direction. It's an interesting one. But, there are applications, thinking about the protothrottle specifically, it would be nice to be able to get the actual locomotive speed back to the user. For a more steam-focused operator, it would be great to be able to have the locomotive track its water and fuel usage such that you could know, do I need to stop at water at this next station, or can I make it on down the line another 10, 15 miles? Being able to have that feedback path from the locomotive to the operator of more detailed information opens up a lot more operational possibilities.
Sounds like it's about building a better simulator and all of that, isn't it?
Yes, and it's not only building the better simulator. I think that comes along with the problem, but just that messaging path of how do you get information from the train to the user. And once you've solved that, then you can start building those physics simulators into the decoder and add another layer of operational interest to your train.
So we've had a pretty long and in-depth conversation here going over the different types of DCC control systems, from NCE to Digitrax to TCS, and of course DCC-EX and the DIY style of command stations. When it all comes down to making a decision, and I think you folks hit on this a little bit earlier, what are the key factors that you should consider before making your purchase?
One would be what do you need it to do? And that kind of goes towards, do you need a simple system? Do you need a more complex system? The other one, like we mentioned earlier, is what does your friend group use? The people who you would fall back on, rely on to help answer questions, debug problems, what do they use? That should definitely be a factor in your decision when you are choosing a system. Nathan?
Yeah, I was going to add, and go to your local hobby shop or your dealer and see see what they carry. Try them out, because what works for me isn't going to necessarily work for you. Our minds think differently, and everybody's like that. So, NCE to me makes perfect sense. To other people, they find it just utterly bewildering. So, go visit your local dealer or vendor, and if you don't, visit a show and ask if you can and try something out. But I think Michael hit a lot of it, is be sure you've defined the problem you're solving first. Don't start with well, I bought this product, now what do I do with it? Start with these are the things I want to be able to do on my layout and with my operations. Now, what do I need to fill that gap?
I think you both hit a very important piece of this between either the hobby shop or your friends, or maybe even a combination of both, of having that support system. It's so important to be able to ask a friend or be able to go to the local hobby shop and get that support and be able to have that. Because although the internet is a great place, it's also a deep, dark place too. And there's nothing like being able to trust the information that's coming back to you with firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like being able to experience it yourself and have people that you know and trust who already have that experience. And, oh yeah, I fought through that problem last week. Here's how you do it.
So we've taken a journey through the different control systems and talked about their features and benefits and things to think about when you are making that decision. And now it's time to hear the answers to the question of the month. This is where you, the listener, can be heard on Around the Layout podcast. Go to aroundthelayout.com/question and answer the question of the month. Tell us about it in 90 seconds or less, and you may just hear yourself on Around the Layout podcast like these 6 folks who answered the question, what control system do you use on your layout and why? We're going to go to our first answer to that, and that comes from Brian Sopke.
Hey, Ray, this is Brian Sopke with the Benton and Southern Railroad in Sandy, Oregon. For the question of the month, I use the NCE control cab as well as a pair of proto throttles from Iowa Scale Engineering. The NCE system is a great system, very user-friendly and easy to use. The Digitrax is also good as well. I love using the proto throttles because it adds a whole nother layer of realism to my operations. Thanks for the awesome podcast. Keep up the great work. Have a great day.
Well, this is an audio podcast, so you'll have to believe me when I tell you I saw at least 1, maybe 2 fist pumps when that answer was played from these 2 gentlemen. We didn't get into the proto throttle because I believe that's really kind of an accessory once you get beyond the control system. But in layman's terms, talk about how the proto throttle works and how it works across different control systems. How does that magic happen?
Yeah, so that was a design decision we made up front. We wanted it to work with as many control systems out there and as much as possible be agnostic of what it was working with. We wanted it to just act as another throttle on your system, whatever that system might be. And so to do that, the design approach we took is there's a radio in the throttle, obviously. It's a wireless throttle, and it talks to what we call a receiver board. And then the receiver board is what contains the special intelligence that lets you talk to a particular DCC system. So for instance, NCE, it translates the commands coming from the proto throttle into the language that the NCE system speaks. And similarly for Digitrax through the LNWI, the Wi-Fi protocol. And Lens has its own protocol. MRC has a protocol. What ones am I forgetting, Nathan?
I mean, people have used...
Oh, the ESU. The ESU.
Yeah, the ESU. Yeah, the cab control. It has its own special protocol, but that receiver is the translation layer between the controls on the proto throttle and making it look like just another cab on your control system.
We could do a whole other podcast on the proto throttle, and we could talk about its features and benefits. And the only thing missing from it, which I have said many times before, is the Surgeon General's warning regarding addictiveness, because that's exactly what a proto throttle will do. But that, again, we'll save that for another show. Let's head to Dave Opedisano.
Hi, Ray. This is Dave Opedisano from Fort Worth, Texas. I currently use the North Coast Engineering DCC system. I've been a long time North Coast user since the Powerhouse Pro that was released in 1998. I've upgraded the system using wireless and have currently upgraded the system using a TCS Command Station 105 that allows Wi-Fi operability with the system. Great show, Ray. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you soon.
Well, thanks, Dave, and thank you for submitting your answer for the question of the month. And Dave talks about not only a system that is upgradable with the NCE system, but then getting it to work with TCS that upgrades its capabilities.
Yeah, TCS did a really clever thing when they came out with their CS105 system. They provided a port on it that emulates an NCE command station or a lens command station. So if you already have an existing install base of NCE throttles and you don't want to invest in updating them all or upgrading them all right away, from the user's standpoint, the TCS command station looks like an NCE command station. So from their point of view and helping users move to their system, it was a really, really clever move. And by the way, the implementation is great. It works flawlessly with the protothrottle receiver, and given it used some things that were a little less used in the NCE language, so to speak, that was good news to us.
Let's keep it in Texas and let's head out to Chuck Stansel.
Hey, Ray and team, this is Chuck Stansel from Houston, Texas. My control system of choice is the CS105 from TCS, Train Control Systems. I was originally a Digitrax user, but now that I'm into LCC, I wanted something that fits into that ecosystem. The CS105 seamlessly connects to either a wired LCC network, which is what I have, or a Wi-Fi based one. I'm also a protothrottle user, and so adding the appropriate receiver to the CS105 was as simple as just plugging it into the cab bus port. I also love to operate, and having a TCS UWT50 wireless throttle is a fantastic tool. I've taken mine to many op sessions hosted by others. It's a great throttle and easily connects to any Wi-Fi capable control system. Talk to you soon.
Let's talk about that capability, Michael, where Chuck's able to take that throttle. He uses it at home on his CS105, but then picks that UWT50 up, and he can pretty much take it anywhere where they've got a Wi-Fi interface. That's really a powerful thing.
Yeah, it lets you take a throttle that you're familiar with and pretty much use it on any layout that supports the Wi-Fi protocol. So there's that familiarity aspect to it. Plus, if the layout you're going to is short physical throttles, well, you can bring your own and you don't have to worry about is it compatible or not.
A lot of great flexibility there within that product. Awesome stuff. Let's head down to Florida. Mr. Iris.
Hello, my name's Don Iris, owner of the P&W Railroad in Sebastian, Florida. I chose the NCE system back about probably 15, 20 years ago. It's a very dependable system, very user-friendly, great tech support. And like everybody else, everybody around me had NCE, so it was very convenient that you'd be able to take your throttles from layout to layout. And the same thing when guys operate on my layout. I had like 15 operators on my old layout. So it was nice that guys had their own throttles they could bring to operate with. So, yeah, like I said, it was very dependable, and I really can't complain about anything. And it's, they've updated it enough times, but it's dependable and it'd be a good choice. Take care.
I'll share a personal story. I chose NCE because Don was NCE. It's neat to hear that Don chose NCE because somebody else had NCE. And it all kind of goes back to that point that you folks made earlier about look at what your friends are doing and kind of build yourself a support network with it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's head out to the Pacific Northwest and Dave Honan.
This is Dave Honan from Snoqualmie, Washington. I've selected NCE's line of DCC equipment for my layout. I've already purchased a starter set, even though I haven't even begun construction yet. My decision was informed by friends who have NCE equipment on their layouts. I've used that and am comfortable with it. And also some of them are local to me and can assist when I have issues. I have some familiarity with Digitrax from other layouts, and I've just never felt comfortable with that system and decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. Love the show as always and look forward to hearing what other people have to say. Thanks, Ray.
And there we go. Another vote for give a couple systems a try and find out what you like. It's a familiar theme here, isn't it?
Very much is. And I can't stress that strongly enough. It's one thing about having or developing the protothrottle receivers is that it's given me the chance to interact with pretty much all the DCC systems and given me a chance to do a lot more comparison than I could in the beginning. And yeah, each has strengths and each has weaknesses. And that's why it's important to figure out which one you as a user are comfortable with.
And our last answer comes to us all the way from Australia.
G'day, listeners. Gary Rumming here from Sydney, Australia. To answer the question, my choice of DCC control is NCE Power Cab. Why? Look, it's versatile, easy to use, easy to navigate. You can set up your throttle in no time, whether you want to set up your momentum, your braking, your configurations, where you want certain buttons to be. Too simple, too easy. At exhibitions, I find it really easy to give a quick run by on the operation of the throttle to the punters who would like to drive a train on my layout. Within 20, 30 seconds, they've got the hang of it. They can just pick the throttle up, drive a train, do a bit of switching, hand the throttle back, walk away, happy as Larry. That's the reason. Easy, simplistic. What can I say more? One of the better controllers out there. And as they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Cheers.
Great hearing from you, Gary. Thank you for submitting your answer to the question of the month. And exhibition layouts, we talked about this before. Self-contained seems to be the right answer, isn't it?
Yeah, that certainly makes it a lot easier. It's just plug in and go pretty much. And so setting up, there's less to worry about going wrong. It's ideal for a situation like that.
Well, thank you to everyone again for submitting their answers to the question of the month. Don't miss next month's question of the month. Go to aroundthelayout.com/question, submit your answer for the question of the month, and you may just hear your voice heard here on Around the Layout podcast. Michael and Nathan, thank you so much for coming by Around the Layout podcast and giving us a rundown of DCC control systems, giving us a little bit of an explanation and providing a little bit of clarity as to what all these systems are and the features and benefits they provide us as we're building our layouts or adding or upgrading. All great things to be considered. Looking forward to seeing you both in St. Louis.
You too, Ray. Looking forward to seeing you there as well. Thanks for having us on. We really do appreciate the chance to talk to you and your listeners.
Thank you, Ray. Looking forward to seeing you in St. Louis.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us Around the Layout. Listeners of Around the Layout podcast can submit. It's not how I say this. This is what. You think I'm recording this at 3:00 in the morning or something? Holy mackerel, what's wrong with me today?
Yeah, your brain's on holiday today too.
Yeah, that is for sure.